friends, my name is Mailynn and welcome back to my channel. I'm a flutist, performer, and music teacher located in the city of Kamloops, British Columbia, and this is my channel where we do all things flute, so thank you so much for joining me here today. In today's video, we're going to be doing a very popular piece called Scarborough Fair, so if you're interested, then just keep on watching. As always, if you have any questions throughout the video, please feel free to drop them in the comment section down below. I do my best to answer them as soon as I see them. Also, if you have any issues when it comes to practicing, please feel free to check out my free practice guide, also located in the description down below. It gives you a really easy steps to follow to help guide your practice sessions. Alright, so let's just get right into today's video. So as I previously mentioned, we will be learning Scarborough Fair. I am taking this specific transcription from 8notes.com, and this is the flute trio part, so we're going to have the accompaniment part at the end of the video. If you're interested in reading the score as it was written, I'll leave a link in the description down below for you there. It's free, and it's not sponsored or anything, I just really like the resources there. So I'm going to put up the first flute right over here. So this one might be a little bit tricky in terms of its range. So if you want to drop it down an octave, that's totally okay. You can always drop it down to that octave, but just be aware you will be playing a few low Cs. Alright, so before we get into playing the piece, we're going to go through our first 6 starter bits, and then we'll get into clapping and counting and then playing it on the flute. So number one, we are going to be looking at our key signature. So we always are going to look in between that treble clef and the time signature to see if we have any accidentals to indicate what the key signature might be. So in this case, we have one flat, and if you've memorized what that is, that means it can either be an F major or its relative minor, D minor. So let's take a look and see if we have any indications of either of those keys by looking at the first and the last notes. Usually you'll have the tonic of either the minor key or the major key. So we start and end on a D, so that's a strong indication that we are in D minor. So let's take a look and see if we can find any indications of D minor. So generally we want to look for the raised 7th, so that means if you go into the tonic D and we go down one step on the piano, so that'd be one key on the piano, you'd be looking for C sharps. However, we also want to see if you can find any of the raised 6th, which would be not B flat, but B natural. So at a quick glance throughout the piece, we see a ton of B naturals here, specifically at bar 7 and also at bar 23, but none of the C's are sharp. So we are kind of in an interesting D minor mode, generally speaking, but for your own reference, we are mostly in D minor. Number 2, we're going to be looking at our time signature. So we have 3/4 written there right beside the key signature. So the top number tells us how many beats we have per measure. So that means we have 3 beats per measure, and the bottom number tells us what note type those beats are. A 4 represents a quarter note, so that means you have 3 quarter notes per measure. Whenever I like to count this, I like to think of 1 being the nice strong beat, and it's kind of like at the bottom of a wheel. So it's kind of going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It has a nice wheel and moving motion to it. Number 3, we are going to be looking at our tempo indication. So speaking about how fast we want to go, we have lento with a dotted half note equaling 45 beats per minute. So when I end up doing the clap and count and playing along with the flute, I will be doing it at that same tempo. So that just means the dotted half note means that the metronome is going to be every 1 beat 1. So that would sound like this if I were to count it out with the metronome. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Of course, you can always make it so that you hear every single quarter note, but I would recommend practicing it like this unless you're having issues with counting any of the rhythms throughout the piece. Then you can always, again, turn it up into a tempo where you can count every single quarter note. If you did want to have the metronome for practicing reasons, counting every single quarter note, I would start at about a quarter note equals 106. Alright, number 4, we're going to be looking at our dynamics. So we start off on a P. P represents piano, which is softly. Then we don't have anything written up until bar 5, and we do have a nice crescendo when we get into that high D there. And then we were going to play that for 1 bar, then we have that D crescendo written into the bar after that. And then we're back down to piano at bar 9. And same thing all the way. We're playing piano so nice and soft up until we have a decrescendo at bar 15 to a pianissimo, so it's the double P. But then again, you're just going to go back to piano after that on bar 17. And then we don't have anything written up until bar 21 where we have crescendo again. Similar like what we just did in the first part. And then the same decrescendo in the bar following that. And then at bar 25, we come back to piano. We play piano all the way up until the end where we have a nice decrescendo to pianissimo. So generally speaking, we are playing this at a softer dynamic. Again, it's really important that you still have the right amount of air support, so you're still getting the right tone and pitch of the notes. However, it just has a nice soft feel to it. So it shouldn't be like you're screaming it or having it echo really loudly in the room, but make sure that you still have a really nice supported sound. So even if that means playing at what feels like a mezzo piano to you, mezzo piano to piano, that is totally okay as well. I really want to make sure that your sound is good when you play this piece. Number 5, we're going to be looking at our articulation. So we're going to see if we have any interesting articulation here, things like slurs, marcatos, or staccatos. So generally speaking, we don't have anything written too difficult, it's mostly just slurs. So just pay attention to where we have a slur, so it's a line over the top of the notes that indicates that we are only tonguing the first note of that group of notes and then tonguing the next one after it's been under the slur. And then number 6, we're going to be looking at our roadmap. So we're going to see if we have any repeats or decapos. And at a quick glance, I don't see anything. So we're going to just be reading it from top to bottom. Now we're going to get into clapping the piece. So again, I'm going to be beating this at a dotted half note equals 45. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and 2, and 3, 1, 2, 3, rest. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and 2, and 3, 1, 2, 3, rest. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right, very good. So if you do find that that was a little bit too fast for you, feel free to go back into the playback settings of the video and go back into that section and just play it at a slower speed, and that'll help you to match up a slower tempo for you to clap and count. My recommendation here is just to make sure that you're paying attention to the dotted quarter and eighth, so making sure that you're counting that right, the 1 and 2 and 3, 1 and 2 and 3, and if you want to write that above the notes, it would be beat 1 plus the and 2, and then the and of 2 goes on the 8th note. Make sure that you really are paying attention to that rhythm. Otherwise, it is fairly simple, just making sure that you're counting all of the correct amount of note length so that they are played to the correct rhythm there. We're going to get into playing the flute. So before we do that, we are just going to make sure that we check all of the notes there. So make sure that you know all of the note names. Feel free to write them above the note, the letterheads, or below, whatever works best for you, as well as circling any of those accidentals. So whenever we have a B natural, for example, that might be good for you to circle just in case it doesn't take you by surprise when you are playing it for the first time. And then also, if you're not sure for any of the fingerings, there is a fingering chart linked in the description of every single one of my videos so that you can cross-reference the correct note, name, and also the fingering there for yourself, just to make sure that you're getting all the correct notes before we start performing the piece. Alright, so as I mentioned before, this is getting into the higher range. It does get into the high D as originally written. So if you want to play it an octave lower, you can totally do that. I may or may not include just a little picture of a transcription of this melody an octave lower. Please let me know if that's something you would like. Put it in your comment sections and then I can include it maybe in a linked post, whatever works best for you. But if not, I'm just going to be playing it as is. Make sure that when you are playing the higher notes that you are getting the correct fingering, the D does change. So it's almost like you're playing G underneath it. You're just going to be lifting up the first finger on your left, and that should be that high D. Alright, so now we're going to get into playing the piece. Again, a dotted half note equals 45. 1, 2, 3, 1. So again, if you're having issues with how fast that is, it is totally okay. Feel free to just go back into the playback settings and change the tempo there so that it is at a slower pace so that it will be easier for you to practice along. Alright, so that's just going to be it for today's video. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section down below. And if you have any issues with practicing, check out my free practice guide, also located in the description down below. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me here today. And again, if you do have any requests for the lower octave, so the same piece, just an octave lower, let me know and I can get that available for you guys. I just want to say thank you so much for joining me here today. I hope you're having an amazing day. And as always, happy fluting!